Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for making the time to join us today. For those who I have not yet met, I am Christina from myosh, and I will be your host today. Today's session is part of our myosh Academy. And for those new to us, the Academy is our open learning initiative for health, safety, environment, and quality professionals like yourselves. We run regular webinars, publish resources, and bring in some of the best thinkers in the industry, all to help you guys out and help you be safer and complete all the smarter work that you can. So now I want you guys to think about this. Think about the last minor incident in your organisation. Was it a small cut? Was it a near miss? A bit of damage? What happened to it? For most of us, it became a tick box form, a quick cause, probably failure to follow procedure, and a closed file. Now, with that, multiply it by every minor event you record in a year. That's an enormous amount of learning quietly thrown in the bin. Today, Mark's going to show us how you get that back. So I'm going to introduce Mark. He is the founder and managing director of Investigations Differently. He's spent decades in risk, safety, and auditing roles with some of the biggest mining names in the country. He's trained in all the traditional methods, ICAM, the 5 whys, which is exactly why his message about doing investigations differently carries so much weight. So, Mark, I'm going to hand it over to you and let's chat some more.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Christina. Going to have to adjust that bio. Spent decades. Sounds like I've been
It makes you
doing
sound old, doesn't it? Sorry. Spent minutes, guys.
Look, hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a great group today. Awesome. So, look, this is number 2 of our series, which the first one was about choosing what to investigate. And choosing what to investigate. So this follows that up, and then the next 2, we've got 2 more in the series. So hope to see you all there. So let's get into this one. So this one's about a thing called Event Insights, and I'll sort of give a bit of background about where we came from. So this is a story I actually haven't told in a while. So I was working for a mining company. I was as a contractor, as a consultant, and this incident had happened about 12 months before I went and did some work with them. And basically, this is an underground mine. And what happened was a person was driving out of the underground mine. Imagine it's like a steep ramp. They jumped out of the vehicle to go and grab their name tag off the board there. And as they've done that, the vehicle's rolled down the ramp and it's hit this concrete pumping vehicle. So they did an ICAM. And it was like, okay, what learning are we going to get out of this? And unfortunately, this is the learning they got. The worker failed to follow the procedure. And so what they did was they gave them a written warning and they retrained them. So investigation closed. Does that sound familiar? Is this, we're seeing this sort of thing happen time and time again. We do a peripheral, we do an investigation. This was an ICAM. It wasn't even just a straight 5 whys. And this is what they get. Does it fix anything? Do they prevent reoccurrence? Do they reduce risk? Does it achieve anything? Think of the outlay here in terms of time. The time gone to gather what little evidence they got, because I don't think they got much evidence out of this. The time it took someone to write the report and look in their little book of knowledge, book of answers, and get all the answers. And they did all this stuff. What was there? They didn't ask the right questions. And so this happened about 12 months before I got here. And so I've been there, some 12 months later, I pop up and I'm doing some other work, actually helping them with their critical risk. And I get in the morning, and guess what? The general manager of the mine comes up and says, "Hey, Mark, we've just had this incident." Exactly the same thing. It didn't hit a concrete pump. This time, it just hit the wall. Same time of the day, doing the same task, different driver, same sort of vehicle. And this time was like, okay, well, hang on, let's apply a different way of learning. Let's look at it. Let's look at the investigation differently and see what we can come up with. So I did the investigation, and for this one, there was two people on the investigation team. There was me and the driver. And I even took the driver in to talk to the general manager when I interviewed the general manager. So they were the two people on the investigation team, the person who was driving the vehicle and me. And this time we looked into some other things. We went a bit deeper, and these are some of the things we started to find. So parking, there was not enough parking there. There was normalised deviation. Plenty of people would so they were meant to park in a car park off to the side of the ramp. Plenty of people didn't. They just stopped because there wasn't enough parking. They were under production pressure. It was the end of shift. There was this pressure to get out from underneath working so they could let the explosives off. There was time constraints. They'd actually changed about that. They'd made a change about where and when to have to tag off on this mine, but there was no change management. If there was no change management, there was no risk assessment. Supervisors never saw this process at end of shift because the supervisors had already been out from underneath the hole some 2 hours beforehand. So there was no supervision. There was no control effectiveness reviews around this control about how we park, because how they park was one of their critical controls to make sure they didn't have runaway vehicles. All these things for an inquiry that didn't take a month, for an inquiry that took barely a day. A day and a half, we learnt this within a day and a half. And it was from changing how we approach the investigation. Because at the end of the day, and this is a quote from the fabulous Todd Conklin, telling me an event or an incident was caused because a worker failed to follow procedure or, made a mistake is like saying an apple fell out of a tree due to gravity. It's always true. We've learnt nothing. And the way I like to paraphrase Todd here is that every time you have an incident in your organisation, the worker failed to follow the procedure. Quite simply because your procedures don't do step 1, grab the tools, step 2, do the work, step 3, get hurt, step 4, damage the equipment. We never allow for bad outcomes in our procedures. Our procedures always have happy endings. So it's the most obvious answer. This is a symptom. This is a symptom of the infant. And this is what we've got to start to do. And unfortunately, this 5-why approach, great. It is a reasonable methodology. Like, technically, it's okay. And for those that aren't aware, it came from Toyota to solve production line issues. So it's aligned with, Toyota, Lean, Six Sigma, those sort of concepts. The problem with 5 whys is the failure is never linear and there's always more than one root cause. Too often the problems I see with this are really poor parent-child relationships in the 5 whys. The wrong starting point. So they end with the work of, rather than end as a root cause, which is what they do, they end with the root cause of the worker failed to follow the procedure. That should be the start point for the 5 whys and why they do it. So we quite often see for these minor, medium harm events that we're talking about, 5 whys as one of the tools used by many organisations. And the problem is that they're poorly applied and quite often end in blame. Predetermined list. So many of you use databases that use predetermined lists. So there'll be like checkboxes that you tick and you pick, which is the most appropriate answer. So, even if it's and they originated from forms, they were in forms first before we put them in databases. And, sorry, myosh, I've seen them in myosh as well, but that's client's choice, with what they choose and how they choose to put these things in, because myosh has a lot more options than that. But we see these tick boxes, and quite often what we've seen people do is because it's pervasiveness of ICAM, they use the ICAM manual. right? And so what we're left with is supervisors entering these into databases. They're not really worried about too much. They're just ticking and flicking. They're just trying to get it done with, and they'll just pick the box. And again, a lot of them are people orientated. Worker wasn't trained, worker followed procedure. One of my favorite, poor situational awareness. My God. Seriously? I mean, like in the past, yeah, before I knew better, I've used that as a root cause. But now I look back at it in horror and I go, well, hang on. If situational awareness was so important, why do we not train our people to be situationally aware? Because we don't provide any training in situational awareness unless you're in law enforcement or the services. They're the only ones who really get situational awareness training, first responders. So this is where we're at. We're with these predetermined lists and they're just biased. They pick a box. The problem with this is you never learn anything new. You're just confirming, and it's subject to hindsight bias, confirmation bias, counterfactuals, all those really great things great things, being sarcastic there, that we see in investigations. So, we've got to be better. We've got to be better than this. And too often they just scratch the surface. Worker wasn't trained. And someone put in the chat, I just saw it flash up before when I mentioned the thing. Someone put a thing, what was wrong with the training in the first place? Yeah, that's the question we need to ask. That's the question we need to ask. Why weren't they trained? What was wrong with the training? Did we not need, they know they needed to be trained? Did their training not, do we not have a training needs analysis? Does the training needs analysis not match up with their training that they've got? All these things we need to understand rather than the worker was not trained. Because we fix that, worker not trained, all we fixed is one worker. We've did nothing to reduce the risk. So we need to get some depth in what we do. We need more depth because there's not enough depth with that. And for me, it comes down to a few questions. And the first question is this: why do we investigate? Because we need to have the right objective. And too often what we find is, and a lot of your procedures and some of you hopefully have changed, and hopefully some of the people on this call that work with me have, is prevent reoccurrence. And I could verbatim, I can see it in my head now. It's the procedure will read something like this: all events, all incidents must be reported, recorded, investigated to identify the root causes and apply corrective actions to prevent reoccurrence. Well, how well are we doing with that? How well are we doing with that? Because if we want to prevent reoccurrence, well, okay, well, let me put it this way. If for those of you that have driving, and which most of you would have driving as one of your risks, if you wanted to guarantee that you would prevent anyone ever having a driving incident in your organisation ever again, what would you need to do? Eliminate driving. You wouldn't be allowed to have anyone drive anymore. If you wanted to stop people having forklift incidents, park them up. Park them up. It's not practical. It's not realistic. We can't do it. Yeah. So if you don't believe me, have a look at your last 2 years worth of investigations at any level. Delete all your admin. Delete all your admin actions and PPE. And so that's all your procedure actions, training actions. Delete all of that. How many incidents have nothing left? Actually, do it for your risk registers. That's even more fun. So that's a poor objective. What do we want to do? It's all about reducing risk. That's our job, is to facilitate risk reduction. And that's a shout out to Dave Proven in his paper there from his PhD. Reduce risk. That is what we want to do, right? And risk is the stuff you don't know, right? So it's all about what can we learn? The event is a trigger to learn and reduce risk. And reduce risk. That's what we're after. And it's all about what our skin in the game is as an organisation. We've got to stop pointing the finger. It was okay 30 years ago, to point the finger. But now we've really got to be genuine. How does the organisation enable error? Because when we look at it, when we really truly look at it, when we're talking about risk, it's the organisation that creates the risk. The organisation that controls what resources are used, when they're used, who uses them, the training for it, the procedures for it, time, production pressure, KPIs, all determined by the organisation. And it's the PCBU that has the legal responsibility to manage risk, not the workers. Workers have other obligations under the Acts. Right? And one more thing before I move on is what is risk? What is risk? Too few safety professionals know the true definition of risk. It's actually quite a little scary for me. When we look at what the true definition of risk is, if we go to ISO 31000, the risk management standard, it says risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. Thank you, committee-based definitions. But when we really look at it, the effect of uncertainty on objectives, the effect of uncertainty on keeping people healthy and safe. Well, that's great grammar. Healthy and safe. There we go. It took me a second. That's what risk is. It's the uncertainty of that, the effect of that. So uncertainty, the unknown, the things we're unsure of, that's risk. And that's what investigations are meant to do. Learn what we don't know, what we're unsure about, what we're uncertain of, because that's risk, and then reduce it. That's what we're after. So, event insights, which is what we're going to run through today. We created this to replace things for minor, medium harm. And this took me about 18 months to create. I did it in conjunction with Job Havinga, who's now with Powerlink, but was with Griffith University, and Job and he has his PhD. He was a lecturer there. Job, great guy. So Job and I wrote this, and specifically to have a methodology that looks at these minor, medium harms events, and it's 7 questions, and they're meant to be engaging, and they're meant to be operationally aligned. And when do we use them? We don't use them for the high-level events. We don't use them for credible critical potential events. We don't use them for notifiables. We use them for minor, medium harm, and there's an opportunity for organisational learning. So there must be an opportunity for organisational learning. So those that dialed into last week's, 2 weeks ago session, this is what we talked about with organisational learning. So organisational learnings, those things, and this conversation around return on investment. Is there enough to learn about maybe in change management? Maybe it's about the complexity of controls, the complexity of work. Maybe there's organisational learning around multiple stakeholders and others benefiting. That's organisational learning. That's when we use this particular methodology. It's not for critical events. This is meant to be done. You could do this within a couple of hours of an event. That's what it's designed to do. And this is what our goal. Our goal is to learn why things make sense, because workers do things that make sense at the time. Now, they might admit afterwards that they got it wrong, and they probably do. In most cases, they do. In fact, the amount of times I've interviewed people after something's gone wrong, they've gone, yeah, I stuffed up. Sometimes they use other language, but yeah, right. But at the time, it made sense to them. At the time, it made sense to them. And this is what we want to uncover. Why does it make sense? Why does it make sense? And not just that time, other times when they do that task. Other times when they do that task. That's what it's about. And it's about shifting our thinking from who failed to what failed. And really looking at those systems of work. And this question set is based on what we call generative questions. And you all would have heard today, I'm assuming, about open questions. Tell me, explain, describe, show me, those questions that get people to open up to us. You can't just answer them with a yes or no. These questions are a step further down that track. They're technically, we call them generative questions. I prefer to call them conversation starters. In fact, I might rename it for my training, conversation starters, because we get so much more out of meaningful conversations than we do out of an interview. Because let's face it, an interview is just a polite way of saying interrogation. That triggers a little bit for me from back when I was in the federal police. So conversation starters, how much more enjoyable is it to have a conversation with someone? And that's what we want to do. Have conversations with people. Encourage them to open up. Get the two-way communication happening, the active listening, right? Being invested in what they have to say, genuinely curious. That's what these questions are designed to do. So they're not just ask the one and move to the next. They're designed to start a conversation at each one. That's what we're after, right? And it starts with your own attitude. So firstly, how do I put this? If I've got someone doing an investigation, I've got them for half an hour, maybe at best 2 hours to interview them and have a conversation with them. Do I want to spend my time just learning about the stuff I've already learnt, I already know? My goal is to discover the things that I don't know that I don't know. Have fun with that one. Because that's what risk is. Risk is the stuff you don't know that you don't know, right? So if I've got someone, that's what I'm going to do. If I think the truck driver's the problem, and I might have been when I was a truck driver, because I was a bad truck driver. I was hopeless. But if the truck driver's the problem, I think the truck driver's a problem, all my questions will be about the truck driver. If all my questions are about the truck driver, all my solutions will be about the truck driver. And if all my solutions are about the truck driver, I've fixed nothing. I've done nothing to reduce the risk. So your own attitude to the people that you're interviewing, it's respect. They're the experts in the work. We treat them as such. Let's get on to the questions. 7 questions. First 3 are only about the event. They're the only 3 questions we ask about the event. Describe the event. Walk me through what happened. I'm going to go through each of these questions a bit more in depth in a minute. What surprised you about the event? Could things have gone worse and why didn't they? So those first 3, that's all we want to know about the event. Because now we're going to talk about the work, about the everyday. When this task goes well, what must go right? You can rephrase that. What's a good day? What's a good day look like? We're asking in a positive way. We're getting them to be excited about talking to us, right? Because most people have pride in their work. They want to share what's going on. What frustrates them with doing the task? So this is about the task in general. It's not about on the day. It's about the task in general. What could management better understand? How can we improve how we do this and identify key insights? I'm just going to go through each of those a little bit more depth. Walk me through what happened. We need to know what happened from their point of view. They're involved. They know what was there. It doesn't matter what CCT we've got. And gives them a voice. Where's the best place to ask this question? Well, not in your office. Sit behind a desk. Not in a crib room. Out there where they do the work. They can show you. They can demonstrate. They can do a mini reenactment. It helps them narrate their own account. It helps them organise their thoughts. Right? And you might be surprised what they remember. They might be surprised by what they remember by doing it that way. Let's walk through the task. What surprised you about it? This one, I love this question because until it went wrong, it was going right. They had a plan that they thought was working. Even if they had to change the plan because things stopped working, they go, okay, the new plan, it's going to work. I always say this, I say, I'm surprised why anyone, because this is where hindsight bias comes in from us, right? How could you not see that? Well, how would that surprise you? You should have seen that. But this is the thing. I'm surprised then why anyone gets bitten by a shark. How can anyone get bitten by a shark anymore? Because don't they hear the music? before the shark bites them. Dun it, dun it, dun it. You know, they don't need the music. Work's not a Final Destination movie. By the way, if you ever have trouble with scary movies, watch Final Destination with the sound off. Much different, almost like a comedy. Hilarious. So trust me, give it a go. Just turn the sound off and try Final Destination. But this is the thing. What happened? What got them? What bit them that they didn't think was going to bite them? Right? This is what we want to understand, because they had an expectation and it didn't work out that way. It didn't work out that way. Were they good or were they lucky? Were we good or were we lucky? Good things have gone worse than why didn't they? Now, the good thing about this question as well, when you're having this genuine conversation with them, this also gives you a reality check about how you've classified the event. Because if they turn around and go, actually, we could have died, then we're in the wrong investigation tool. Right? We should switch to a blue line, right? Or a high-level investigation outcome tool. Were we good or were we lucky? Did we fail safely? This is the question I want to know. This will reveal about our control effectiveness, which, by the way, I think is the number one issue we have in safety right now, is false assurance around control effectiveness. That's a whole other thing we can talk about at some other stage. Could things have gone worse and why didn't they? Right. First three questions about the event. And now we're going to switch hats. Now, you can actually reverse the order. You could ask these four questions first and then follow up with the event. Might do that next time I do it out in the field. When this task goes well, what must go right? In other words, what's a great day look like doing this task? It's a very positive question. Very positive questions, because we want to avoid initially talking about failure, because if you ask, when's it go to rubbish? I don't use the last term there. When's it go to crap, right? They'll pretty much just tell us what happened with the event. I don't want to know. They've already told me about the event. Now I want to know the other things, because typically what they'll say is things like, oh no, what's a good day like? We have the right amount of resources, we have the right people, we have the right tools and equipment, we have plenty of time, it's not raining, there's plenty of light, we don't have the client or coming down and going, what are you doing? We don't have the contractor messing up. So I had to throw both in there for both sides of that coin. We learn these things that are important to them, because that's what we want to understand, is what's important to them. Because, we go back to what Todd and others talk about, that workers imagined. We think that certain things are important. Sometimes they're nonsense. Like, we think doing the take 5 is important. Guess what? Surprise, it's not. What's important to them? Because that's actually what affects the work, because they're the closest to the work, because they're doing the work, right? So learning what's important for them for success tells us so much, because of the absence of those, or the failure of those, they're things we need to ensure go right? Because when we talk about things like safety differently, new view, whatever you want to call it, it's about ensuring things go well, not preventing things going wrong. It's ensuring things go well. So setting people up for success. Really cool question. Really cool conversations can come out of this one. Frustration. Now we're going to flip it. When are you frustrated? And this is the thing we know, because frustration has a whole bunch of consequences. Really reveals itself in deviation. Really reveals itself in deviation. One of the things I like to ask is, what's the difference between innovation and a shortcut? What's the difference between innovation and a shortcut? And people sometimes struggle and they go, it's, all these things, one's safe, one's not unsafe, and all that sort of stuff. It's just approval. It's just approval. Innovation's approved, shortcuts maybe not. How many innovations start from shortcuts? So when people get frustrated, they'll deviate. And when do they get frustrated? They get frustrated when things aren't working out how they anticipated. When they have to adapt, when things are out of their control. That's when they They do these. That's the adaptation. And then, well, if you want to lean into the science, that's when things like Rasmussen's work and performance modes and changing from knowledge base right up to from skills based to knowledge base. And doing those things, where we're highly experienced with the task and all of a sudden we're not experienced because things have gone wrong. We've got to do it a different way. We're not used to doing it. That's when errors happen. That's when mistakes happen, right? Also, frustration creates fatigue. When people get frustrated, it encourages fatigue and enables fatigue. And we know when people become fatigued, their fine motor skills decrease. Their critical thinking decreases. We know these things, that fatigue does that. So we've got to be careful with these things. So frustration is really cool to learn about frustration. Wow, this is the one that sometimes makes people uncomfortable. What could management better understand about this task? How many times have you in your career, or maybe even now, or you heard workers, in a corner having a whinge about the boss, going, "Oh, if only the person in the glass house or in the mansion on the hill or the corner office really knew what was going on out here." Good leaders do want to know, because for them, if they don't know, it's a risk. It's not a risk to you because you know. It's a risk to them because they don't. So, management needs to ask the question, right? We can't wait for people to tell us. We have to ask, because they don't want to tell us for a whole host of reasons, which I won't go into today. But they won't tell us unless we ask it the right way. Tell us, what do you think we don't understand? Like, what do you think we're missing? Right? Ask those things, right? Because managers, good leaders want to know these things. But sometimes they don't know how to ask the question. So asking within a suite of other questions is a good way of doing it, right? Because what we're uncovering here with this question is risk, uncertainty, unsure, unknowns is what we want to do. How could we improve how we do this task? This is for the oldies in the group, the $64,000 question, which came from an old quiz show, but anyway. It's deliberately written. It's deliberately written because it's not how could you improve how you do this task. By the way, one of my pet hate questions is, what would you do differently? Because that's just a blame question. You've already assumed that basically says they should have done it differently in the first place. Very judgy, that question. This question is a collaborative question. How could we improve how we do this task? Not just the worker, the organisation, the leader, the supervisor, us collectively, collaboratively, right? Collaboratively. How could we improve how we do this? Right? Get their ideas. They're on too often. Every organisation, every safety person, I know this, they know this, we all know this, right? The mantra for a long time now is the subject matter expert, the SME is the person who does the work. Cool. Well, then give them a commensurate stake in fixing it. Because too often we don't give them the stake they've earned by being the subject matter expert in fixing the problem. Even if they're a symptom of the problem, they made the mistake. Give them what they're due and the respect they're due in trying to fix it. By the way, that's accountability. That's accountability. Those are the 7 questions. So you can ask them collaboratively. So you could get them as a group. You can do it one-on-one and add them all together. There's none of this nonsense of separating witnesses. What are we, the popo? No, right? We're there to learn. We're there to learn. A collective memory is far better than a singular memory. And it's collective discussions, collective conversations are far more effective than one-on-ones, right? Get them together. Obviously, you might have the shy one. Yeah, fine. Different horses, whatever works. But you don't need to do this by yourself. Then the leader, whoever's facilitating it, not to analyze each response in isolation, but rather collectively as a group of responses, right? Look for those recurring themes, patterns, Look for those error traps and those things that we really want to dig into. Communication, workload, job demands versus job resources, goal conflicts, all of those things. Let's identify those broader themes and bring them together. Quick note, AI is really helpful with this. One of my clients, mining client, if you feel, I think they're on the call. If they want to nominate themselves, they can. I won't dob you in specifically, just in case you don't want to be mentioned by name. But they're doing great work here. They've created an AI tool for this. So they load all the conversations into AI and say, pull out the key themes. Pull out the key themes for us. Fantastic. Couple of rules around using AI in any investigation. Firstly, if you're going to record someone, get their permission first. We do not record people without their permission. 2, only to use the AI tool that's approved by your organisation. Right? I'm not suggesting for a second you go out and use whatever AI you want. You must use your approved organisational AI. That way, I don't get in trouble. And then the third point thing here is you must sandlot it. So you must tell it not to share the information with anyone and to only use the information that comes directly from the recordings and transcripts, not from any other place. So anyway, just a quick tips around using AI. You don't need AI to do it. You shouldn't need AI to do it, but it can help if you do it asking lots of people. Identify these key themes. Right, we've got our key themes. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Fix them. Why do I have this picture? It's a metaphor. Think outside the box, get outside the box, whatever you want to do. But, blue sky thinking, it's a mixture. And I know a few of you have seen this before from me. What's our box look like? That's what our box looks like. Actually, I should have added another one in there, put it in the procedure, add another line, add another one line to the 50,000 lines of procedure we already had, because that'll make all the difference, right? They're not effective, these actions. Not effective, these actions. You've got to start thinking more like the motor industry. Motor industry, look at a modern car today with all the technology it has. Lane control assist, adaptive cruise control, collision avoidance systems, 360 cameras, blind spot detection, all these things. All these things are in modern cars now. Even the cheapest sort of on-road thing like a little MG for 20 odd grand, you can get these features in your vehicle. What have your forklifts got? A reverse beeper and some falling object protection and a horn and a seatbelt. These features are same features on on vehicles are available for forklifts. We just don't put them on. Just don't put them on. We want to create distance between normal work and the risk as much as we can. I'm going to give you a quick 3-step process to do that. Step 1, apply the hierarchy of control. It's not a label. Start with elimination and work your way down, right? Challenge the stakeholders. So that's step 1. Step 2, focus on solutions within your control. If it's a supervisor doing it, what can they do? What is their control, right? What can they do? Ignore admin PPE, ignore that rubbish. Look what they can control directly with existing resources. Step 3, what's going to work and what's practical, right? And then prioritize those higher order controls. Here's a quick example. We've got entanglement risk on an unguarded machine, right? We can remove the machine. We need it, replace the machine. Well, that's going to be expensive. Install a guard, change procedure gloves there. Our hierarchy of control elements. Scope of control, well, we need border approval for the first 2. We can put a guard on. We can get that. We can do that. Change the procedure, well, we'll have to bring operations and safety. And who wants to bring safety in, right? And gloves, we can make people wear gloves. But then look, what's practical and effective? Really? Effective and practical and reduce risk is install the guard. Just install the guard. Step 3 steps. This is designed for event insights, that 3-step process. It's not designed for high level, which take a lot more work on reducing risk, right? but this is introduced for minor, medium ones to keep it simple. At some stage, were they implemented? Were they sustained, and were they effective? Look at our actions. Let's review those and make sure that we're doing that. Right. Let's make sure we're doing that. Some key takeaways from today. Shift that focus from blame to learning. That's what we do. Right. That's the problem. Like 5 Whys, I often get the comment like, yeah, 5 Whys is a good tool. I've had great results out of 5 Whys. Yeah, you have. You may have. I think I could get 5 good results out of 5 Whys too, but it doesn't. The problem is it doesn't stop people from blaming. That 7 question set that we've given you today, right, stops the blame. Right. Be strategic with those investigations. Only do them on the ones that they're meant to do. Ask the right questions in the right way. Be genuinely curious. Right. Make sure workers are involved in the solutions. Right. And stop wasting resources on trivial events. You'll notice there must be organisational learning available here to do this. If there's limited or no organisational learning, don't do it. Don't do it. I'll take the slide off in a second. That's our website. I think there's links to that Christina will put onto our website and everything. But the white paper that this is based on, it's called Event Insights, Making Minor Events Matter, or something like that anyway. It's on our website under useful stuff. Go and have a look at it, download it. You don't have to put any details in, and it's free for everyone. So look at that. I've come in on time. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
Thank you so much. That was, I think everyone didn't have any questions because we were all listening and taking it all on board. It was actually incredible. Thank you. So in saying that, if you do have any questions, now's the time to pop them in the chat. Chris has just asked, every identified contributing factor should have a corresponding action, right? But often, do you see identified findings with no actions to address?
Okay, so there's a couple of things to unpack there. Firstly, I really dislike labels like contributing factor, root cause, and all those sort of things. I just like calling it risk because then we can prioritise action according to the risks of the organisation. So we're all used to using them. I've used all those terms in the past before. But yeah, Chris, I've seen there should be, if you've gone to the trouble to learn and discover risks in your organisation or risks and call them findings, which is fine, then you should, once you know about it, it's known. You then have to do something about it, right? And then it just becomes about what's reasonably practical to do about that risk, about that finding. So, and making sure that the action actually addresses the risk or the finding that you've come up with. Because too often I see actions and you look at it and you go, well, that's not going to do anything. Like that doesn't address the finding at all, but they put it beside the finding. So yeah, I think I agree with you. If you've identified a risk, you should implement a control, and the control should be reasonable practical control. I hope that answers your question, Chris.
Thank you so much. Is there any other questions before we log off? I will, while we're waiting for any more questions to pop up, our next session is going to be on the 6th of August, so in 2 Thursdays' time, same time. And this session is going to be around systems, not symptoms. So, Mark, write that down if you don't remember.
Yeah, better start writing that one.
And so I'll send everybody a copy of not only this recording, but the white paper on Event Insights, as well as a registration link for that session as well. And so we've got 2 more sessions to go. And after that concludes, myosh is actually going to be doing a product sort of demo series on how you can integrate all this way of thinking and these methodologies into your myosh systems as well. So there'll be a registration link for that as well. So if you're interested or want to learn more on how to actually put this thinking into practice, we will have the opportunity there for you as well. There doesn't seem to be any more questions. Again, Mark, thank you so much. That was incredible. And I think the best thing about all of this is it just makes sense, and it's just taking things back to basics and common sense and just logic, isn't it? And I think that's what makes it easy to understand and think, why aren't we bloody doing this?
Like,
It's simple, but it's effective. So we do have one last question from Charles. Yep. Do you think that even a trivial event can lead to learnings and reducing organisational risk? If so, how do you know?
So basically, if you download go and look at go to the myosh webinar site, look at last week's, and I'll really dig into that one there. But in order to answer your question is, look, we can say anything can lead to learning, right? But what it comes down to is capacity of an organisation to investigate. If we investigate too many little things, it's too much of a time suck. So if there's little organisational learning to be had from it, so like if someone trips over, even if they smash themselves to pieces, like break an arm or something, if they've simply fallen over walking through a car park and we learn that just tripped over their own 2 feet, why would you bother investigating that? Within 2 minutes, there's nothing really going on here, really nothing to learn. So let's not worry about it too much. So, it's that, as someone said, they're truish to the level of risk. And I think that's important. So we do need to give ourselves permissions as organisations not to investigate certain things, because every minute we spend investigating a trivial matter that doesn't have much return on it is a minute we can't spend on doing proactive work and reducing critical risk, which I think is the most important thing we can do as organisations. So, yeah, that's important. And Chris, I do say record it. You do need to record it. The other thing is, just before I go, hey, reach out on LinkedIn if you want. Connect on LinkedIn. Happy to meet up with everyone, make more friends, and you'll see what we've got on LinkedIn.
He's lonely, guys. Go and be his friend.
So lonely. Wow. Well, someone's probably recorded that and then they're going to play it to all my friends. Actually, I don't have any friends. So,
well, you will now on LinkedIn. Watch out. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Honestly, it's always a pleasure. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to Mark, reach out to myosh, whatever you need. We're always around and happy to help. And we look forward to seeing you in part 3.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Bye.